I'm Julie Mason. President Trump announcing on Truth Social that Charlie Kirk is dead. The activist has passed, shot today in the neck in Utah. A suspect is in custody. Joining me now, Eric Conroy is a former CIA case officer and U.S. Air Force veteran, now running for Ohio's 1st Congressional District. Eric, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure to join you, and I wish we were talking under much more fortunate circumstances, and my thoughts and prayers go out to Charlie and his young family and young wife and children. And this was just a dark day for America in our cultural and political history. And, you know, we can have passionate differences as citizens, but we should not ever act them out with violence. And we need to denounce political violence in all forms, whether that's shots against President Trump, shots against Charlie Kirk today, or shots against Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota this summer. So it's a sad day.
It is. I mean, yes, shots against President Trump. One of his would-be assassins is on trial right now. They're doing jury selection. Like it's, you know, and here we are. Yep. Now Charlie Kirk.
And, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, this is what we get when we can't tone down the rhetoric and we demonize sides of the political aisle. And I think the left-wing media deserves a lot of fault for today's events. And when you start calling people fascists and Nazis, it gives the green light to mentally unstable people to act out their wildest fantasies, which I think is what we saw today in Utah, unfortunately.
Which I have to ask, why do you want to join this system? It's deadly, Eric.
Well, you know, in my careers in the Air Force and the CIA, I've always been passionate about doing the hard things and doing what's right for society. So, yes, these are difficult and turbulent times, but I think we need strong people to participate in the system to right the ship and get our society back on track.
Just so. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, a former CIA case officer, Air Force veteran, that's a good background. That's interesting.
Yeah, you know, I've really prided myself on a life of service. I was in junior high and high school, and we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I felt the call to serve. So went into the Air Force, graduated from the Air Force Academy, and spent about 7 years active duty, a few years in Japan and a few years in D.C. And then I joined the CIA after that, and I spent some time in war zones in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe, recruiting bad guys and trying to convince them to switch sides. So I've always been at the front lines of our nation's conflicts, and now I want to be at the front line back home to hopefully take us into the next generation.
One of the sort of very delightful byproducts of that terrible time of war in Iraq and Afghanistan is all these new young veterans joining Congress, you know, for both parties. And overall, it's just been a great thing for government.
Yeah, and I like to think, you know, someone asked me at a speech last week, what traits, Eric, do you bring to the table? And I like to say, like most veterans, I bring leadership and perspective. And I've had to deal with difficult and complex situations overseas, and you learn how to come up with solutions by talking to people and talking to your teammates and talking to knowledgeable experts, because if you don't get enough people around the table and have that great leadership focus, you usually have a bad situation and things don't work out. And then I think secondly, veterans would harp a lot on perspective, right? I've been fortunate to live in several different countries and see how a lot of other societies operate and what they do good and what they do bad. And I want to bring those observations home to my community.
So what is going on with Ohio redistricting, though?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Ohio is legally required to redistrict this year. It's been planned for a few years. I'm not sure what's going to happen. It's a very fluid process, but I will say that I intend to win regardless of how the lines are drawn. Our current incumbent, Democrat Greg Landsman, has pretty much abandoned this district in a lot of different ways, economically and socially, and really just some discouraging incidents, especially related to the brawl that we had here this summer that just shows he's unfit to lead. So I intend on winning this district regardless of how the lines play out, because I think that this district deserves really just a new common sense, fresh look in Washington and here in Ohio.
How have you enjoyed campaigning around Ohio in the district?
Honestly, I love it. You know, in my old job in the CIA, I was, you know, supposed to go hit the streets and talk to people in foreign lands and in foreign languages and hear about what's going on, right? And I'm taking that same approach to my campaign, hitting the streets, talking to people and hearing their concerns, firsthand, out in public at events and on the streets. So it's a very similar mentality that I'm used to in terms of getting out there and not being afraid to talk to people face to face and really hear what their concerns are and what they want their future to look like.
And what are their concerns? What are you hearing?
It's a lot of kitchen table issues, right? Economics and affordability is probably the biggest thing. We're seeing some stats come in economically that the economy is doing well, but people are really curious what the future holds in terms of the next year or two, in terms of jobs and putting money back into their pockets to spend, on basic necessities. And I think that the reception for the big, beautiful bill has been extremely positive right now. Mm-hmm. And when those tax cuts really start to take effect, and we really see that that money hitting the pockets of working class families, we're going to see a great economic impact from it, and it's being viewed very favorably.
Yeah. I mean, just leaning into your national security background, we have this skirmish between Poland and Russia that is such a alarming development.
Yeah, and this is unfortunately a play out of Russia's playbook in a lot of different ways. They will poke and prod in different ways and kind of gauge the reaction of their adversary, right? So they do that by claiming a lot of times it's an accident, to say, hey, it's an accident, sorry, didn't mean that to happen. But these are old tricks that Russia does to kind of gauge a reaction to see what they can get away with. And you have to remember who's ultimately in charge in Russia, and that's Vladimir Putin. And he is, of course, a former KGB officer, so he's used to these political ruses, if you will, to gauge a reaction.
Wow. Well, it's very exciting. Eric Conroy, former CIA case officer and U.S. Air Force veteran, now running in Ohio's 1st Congressional District. I hope you'll check back. Very exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Wonderful to have you. Take care. Eric Conroy, keep an eye on him. Interesting cat running in Ohio's 1st.